right, I believe this is the second film by Mona Fastvold as a director. Now, I haven't seen her debut effort Sleepwalkers, but I have seen 2 movies she's co-written. Vox Lux with Natalie Portman and The Mustang, both of which I really enjoyed. The main cast here is also very solid, so I was expected good performances all around. You know, with people like Katherine Waterston, Vanessa Kirby and Casey Affleck, you can't really go wrong. And they pretty much needed to be on point too, because they're the ones on screen most of the time. Like, I don't know, 95% of the time, because the cast here is actually very limited. It's a movie that's just very small in scope and very contained, focusing on the characters rather than anything else. And the story here takes place around 1856, somewhere around the east coast of the US. And it revolves around this couple who's out there living on a remote farm. And then they suddenly get some new neighbors who move in at the farm next door. And that sparks some new life into them and looks to be, I don't know, an invigorating element in their dull lives. And I don't really want to get into much more detail than that, but let's just say that they lead a hard life out there. The frontier is not an easy place to be, and Mother Nature sure isn't helping things either. But they keep on pushing through, finding solace and joy where they can. And very early on I wrote in my notes that this is pretty much the definition of a period drama. Because it just deals with the realities of life and doesn't shy away from the darker aspects either. With that being said, as the movie progresses, it evolves and turns into something a bit different. Something I very much appreciated, and I couldn't help but to admire how well it handled most things here. Like the humor, for instance, it just has this very, very dry humor, but it dealt with it perfectly. And I feel like the relationships between the characters were very well handled too. And I cannot but praise Katherine Waterston and Vanessa Kirby in this either. They did such a good job with it, but I feel like Casey Affleck managed to shine too. Despite the fact that he's pretty much relegated to supporting cast here, and most of the time doesn't have much to do, but especially in that very last scene, he just knocked it out of the park. I mean, there was just something about his screen presence and performance there that crushed it. And I feel like that was pretty much the cherry on top that solidified this as a pretty good movie. Not that I really had any real issues with it in general either. Or, well, I do feel like Christopher Abbott's character felt a little bit, I don't know, rough. Not really well-rounded or well-developed, and it felt almost like they'd cut a bunch of scenes with him, to be honest. It felt like there were scenes missing where we got to see more of him and learn more about his character. But other than that, I liked just about everything about this, at least to some degree. Especially the fact that it's an oddly suspenseful movie too, with this tangible tension throughout the whole movie. A tension that never really quite reaches its peak and never quite is released. I also feel like the filmmaking in general was very good too, and it's a decent looking movie as well. I mean, they used a lot of natural lighting and the dark scenes were genuinely dimly lit. And that helped make the period feel more authentic, a bit more rough around the edges. And when it comes to the pacing, I must say they did a good job there too. Because this was over way quicker than I expected. Not that it's a long movie either. However, relating to that, the last part did feel somewhat rushed. Again, it felt like a scene or two were maybe missing, which made one certain event feel less impactful than it could have and probably should have. And that was probably the one thing that I really wished they would have polished up a little bit. Other than that though, I think this was a rather beautiful little film, to be frank. And as a result, I'm pretty much inclined to give this one a solid 7. Boop. But does that mean I would recommend it? Absolutely, if you like period dramas, go for it. And if you don't, maybe skip it or do whatever your heart desires. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic.